Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome.
Hi. Is there a delay on the YouTube side usually? Oh, there is.
We're live now, so it's going to be recording and yeah,
Got it.
let's see. Did you catch it?
I had to pause it while I was trying to figure out how to mute it. Oh, got it. Got it.
All
Okay.
right. So we're doing something exciting today, everybody. I am Margaret Pinard. Howdy doody. We're broadcasting on both our channels today from StreamYard. So welcome, welcome to my channel and to Sandy's channel. If you don't know me, I'm Margaret Pinard. I am a historical fiction and fantasy writer and eclectic reader. And we're here for a buddy read discussion today.
Yay.
Sandy, do you want to introduce your channel and your 1001 Books project, which is like
Oh, sure.
very
I'm
unique?
happy to. Hi, I'm Sandy, otherwise known as Miss Reads a Lot on YouTube. I have a 1001 reading project book countdown that I'm doing where I'm reading books off of the 1001 books you must read before you die list. And I'm just working my way through that, which is a massive project. And Regeneration, the book that we're going to talk about today, is actually one of the books on that list. So, we've been planning this buddy read actually for almost a year. It was on my TBR for last year when I picked my 22. So
I know
yeah,
I
it's
had
been.
to ask you like 3 times. Are we doing it this month? Are we doing it this month? I'm losing my sticky note.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but that's pretty much it. Just read all different kinds of books, try and read nonfiction, try and read new release every month. But yeah, the 1001 book list is my main project. So
And they get on that list in all sorts of ways, right? Because I remember when I first heard about your project, I was like, oh, it's like the 500 places to visit before you die kind of list, but for books. But it's a list that multiple people contribute to, and there's this, like sort of
no, this is actually a published book by Boxall, and so they've published like 5 different versions of it. And if you count all the books across all 5 versions, there's 1,315 books. I think the last book might have been published in 2017 or so. So it's been a bit since they
and
had
which
a
one
new
are you
version.
using? Are you using one or
No, I combined all of them together. I'm
okay.
actually reading the 1,315. I just started my channel when I had 1,001 left, around 1,001 left. So I've actually read 350 or so books off of that, right around that, with about a 50 book cushion because some books aren't available, some books are very expensive. So yeah,
Okay.
I have a cushion in there.
Okay. All right. So we've got different editions, but they're both pretty slim volumes, right?
Yeah.
So Regeneration by Pat Barker. It's the first book of a trilogy, the Regeneration trilogy. And just to give watchers an idea, it's a war novel that treats the situation of a soldier in World War I who's come to be evaluated for his psychiatric state and whether he's fit to go back because he's protesting the war in a very specific way. So it's about him, his psychiatrist Rivers, and the other people that he's rooming with, at least in this first book. Does that about sum up?
Yeah, I think so. And with a couple of other like characters or the other doctor that's there, like different treatments, kind of all of those different parts. But yeah, largely it is the patients in this. I don't know if it's not an asylum, it's in a hospital
Yeah,
that are being treated for different conditions. So yeah, very interesting.
nice.
It's my favorite
Hi,
word.
Jenna.
Interesting.
Just say hello to the people in the chat. Hi, Richard. Shelly Swainson.
Shelly's here.
Yay. All these familiar faces. Welcome, welcome.
Oh no. I know who that person was that just joined.
Okay.
Mine. Hi.
Awesome. Okay, so I have rustled up some discussion questions, but is there anything you wanted to say at the outset about your impression, like general feeling about the book, um, or how you
Yeah.
approached it before
So,
we
I mean, I think there were a number of components in this that I really liked. I was surprised a little bit, just kind of, it wasn't quite what I expected it to be. I would have put it
Mhm.
kind of somewhere in the middle of the road so far for this one. It wasn't a book that I said, wow, I love this book. It was good, but it wasn't fantastic for me.
Okay.
But I appreciated a lot of the different components, and I actually marked it, look at with tabs and
You
stuff.
did tabs, yeah. I did not. I turned down corners.
Oh, you're a page. I did mark a
Chaotic
couple of those that
evil.
way because I was out of tabs.
Yeah.
So, what about you? What did you think overall?
So I really liked it. I was really impressed by it. Some of the style choices, some of the characterization choices, and like the humor in it were
Mhm,
really hitting the right spots with me. And then, some of the violent stuff and the psychology stuff was like sort of made me step back a bit and go, "Oh, wow, yeah, this is a war
mhm.
novel," and kind of, like, reintegrate that kinda stuff, so I thought it was
Yeah.
really well done, so I'm excited to read the next in the trilogy.
Yeah, and I told you yesterday, but, book 3 from the trilogy is also on the list, but book 2 is not, so I don't know why that is, but I have to read book 2 as well.
Right. As an author, I can tell you, just because someone puts it into a book doesn't mean, like, it's the gospel truth, so the people putting these books you must read in a book, yeah, I'm glad you have a cushion of, like, discretion because, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I read a lot of other things, but
Yeah.
definitely the Thousand I don't know why. It was, I think, maybe probably about 15 years ago or so that I was looking for other classics to read or other books to read and didn't know where to go and just happened to find that list. And it's just been a passion project of mine ever since then. So I try and read other things that books outside of that. It
Mhm.
made up about a third of my reading last year, not
Okay.
all of my reading. So
Got it.
yeah,
Nice, nice.
keep bumping my microphone. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine, you're fine. Okay, so first question from the loveliestbookgroup.com site, which I thought was a great one. Why is the novel called Regeneration? What do you think?
Oh, you're gonna make me answer
I
first?
can start if you want, but I thought I'd open it up with, like, title. Give me your thoughts on the title.
Well, I like the word regeneration only shows up actually. I found it only one time in the novel. I didn't see it like as an actual word. And
Okay,
in that case, it was nerve regeneration that I saw
right.
it referenced to. So it wasn't like a theme of that, but it feels like regeneration more from like your mental state kind of regenerating, trying to get back to what we quote unquote a normal state would be. That's kind of how I
Oh,
took regeneration to mean in this one, in that context.
interesting. Does that have a positive or a negative connotation for you?
I don't know. It's a great question. A positive or a negative? I didn't really evaluate it from that point of
Okay.
view.
So
Yeah.
I went off on a completely different, like,
Oh,
path for this one. So I took up the generation part and the fact that our main character, Siegfried Sassoon, who is a real person, by the way.
yeah.
So this
Yeah.
takes real people and, sort of imagines parts of their lives, which is very interesting as an approach to historical fiction, which we can get
Mhm.
into.
The
Um,
doctor was also real, from what I
yeah,
had read
I
as
didn't
well.
know
And
him, but yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah.
Right. So he has a big problem with the older men who are sitting at home, sending off the younger men to the front and not um, taking into account that those lives mean something. He has like
Mm,
a really hard time and hates them. Like the hatred, generational hatred is very
interesting.
apparent. And I sort of thought of regeneration as like the phoenix of the war experience because there's always like a transformation of one generation through their war experience into something different and whatever that will be, um and maybe that affects like why it still continues, like we
Interesting.
continue to have these things. So yeah, I liked the title. I had no idea about that going in, but after I was reflecting on it I was like, oh yeah, okay.
I
Yeah.
went into it pretty blind. I went into the book without really knowing much about it, which is often how I do. And so, one of the things that I thought was really effective was how the book opened with the letter. So, there's a letter from Sassoon basically denouncing the war.
Mm.
And I thought that really was pretty brilliant as a way to open it because I felt like that letter could be written by any soldier about any war that has happened over the last like 100 years or so.
Mhm.
So I thought that was really a really great way of opening it. But yeah,
Yeah, I was surprised to see. uh I'll hold it till the end. I don't want to. I don't know if it's a spoiler. It's another character in the book. I'll hold it till the end so we can have like a spoiler section. Okay. Is Regeneration an anti-war novel? Is the next question. Why or why not? So does it come out on either side clearly to you, or is it ambiguous, or what do you think?
It was kind of, I mean, I felt like the most dramatic anti-war statement, and it was the very beginning with the opening letter, right? But even in the book, Sassoon as a character, I believe it was him, had said he wasn't necessarily like a conscientious objector towards war. It was more like fighting for no reason. Like there was no possible hope of a reasonable outcome. And
Right.
so I don't know that it was necessarily pure anti-war. It's pure anti-war for what I would say for just pointless conflicts, right? That's
Mm.
kind of what I got from Sassoon. Is like, well, okay, if it was something that actually was something that could have been, I don't know, a reasonable outcome. Yeah.
Right. If doing the same thing would have produced a different outcome, I'd say keep doing it, but it's
Yeah.
not, and there's no
Yeah.
hope.
So
So
why do we keep doing it? Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah. I did
Hopefully
find it
the
interesting that
candidate.
they had to deem whether he was sane from that letter, and just say coming, that's why he ended up at this institution, right? Was whether or not he, to see if he was actually fit for duty. That's after writing that letter. So I thought that was
Yeah.
really interesting too, because apparently if you're sane, you wouldn't write that. I don't know. I thought that was an interesting one.
Yeah, there was an interesting point where the psychiatrist is reflecting on one of his failures, and he says in his internal monologue something like, when you have someone who you believe and you think they're right in protesting the war, but then it's going to cause like everything to collapse because if you allow this, then everyone is going to revolt, kind of thing, for
Mhm.
structural authority. It's better if you can just declare them insane, because then they're removed from the pool of people who are like rational thinkers
Oh,
in politics, whatever. And I was like, they're saying the quiet part out loud. Yeah.
it's interesting.
Shelly has a good question.
Yeah,
Um,
I answered it in the chat, not realizing we would be putting comments up. Sorry about that.
no, it's fine.
Have you read anything else by Barker?
I haven't. Do I have Silence of the Girls? That's the one that she won a prize for, and I've heard a lot about it.
Mhm.
I haven't really gotten into any of the ancient retellings, so I've read, I think, maybe two. Um, I've heard it's really wait, wait.
Maybe.
Wait, maybe I have. Hold on. There's one that I picked up at a little free library in DC, and I left in DC, and so like it's almost like it didn't happen because it wasn't
Mm.
in my library. Oh no, Storygraph isn't letting me sign in. Um,
I haven't read any other Barker. Like I said, the third book of the trilogy is on here. And then another book called Another World is, but not the one that you were referencing.
Another World?
Silence of the Girls.
Huh. So the Booker Award winning or the whatever it was is not the one on the must read list.
No, nope.
Okay. Um, I'm gonna keep looking for this. The browser is denying me, so I'm gonna look it up on my phone. It didn't sign me out on my phone. Yeah, okay. And then Richard also was saying it's taking him back to when he studied war poetry for his GCSEs. He didn't mention, yeah, this is British soldiers in
Yeah.
1917, so it's a bit removed from our experience.
A World War One
Yeah,
is the time frame for this one. Yep.
right. Sign in. It signed me out of my phone too. Okay. So, Shelley, I think I actually have read The Silence of the Girls, and it was good. I think I gave it like 4 stars, but it was so fast. I think it hasn't like imprinted. So, yeah, nice. All right. What did I say? I said yes, it comes to me as an anti-war novel, but I'm biased, like just out the gate. I can admit
Mm.
that. Any war treatment comes off as anti-war to me. So it's like if I'm reading a war novel, it's going to make me want to protest war in general, just being honest. And when I tried to analyze why that was, I said we have our two main sympathetic characters, the soldier who's speaking out and the doctor, and they're struggling with the necessity of the war. Like the doctor is constantly saying, um, like, I believe him, but it's my job to send him back. Is that right or is
Yeah.
it wrong? That's sort of a
Yeah.
central conflict. So, and not finding a way to stop that from happening in some cases, because I don't want to spoil, um, they fail. So war wins and our sympathetic main characters are thwarted in what they're trying to do. So for me, that sort of positions it as anti-war. But again, I see your point about, yeah, being a little bit more.
Like I said, I think this individual person, like if there was a reasonable outcome, that there was a possibility that it could be resolved, something that he would not have objected to it. That's kind of what I got from him. So yeah, I can see the tones of anti-war in it, especially from that first letter. But even in that first letter, he's like, if there was some reasonable way to get out of this. So that's kind of where I went.
All right. Hi, Dia.
Hi, Dia.
All right. War novel. Question number 3. When does the motif of emasculation arise in the novel? How do the characters address issues of emasculation caused by the war? And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different places that I flagged that actually fit back into this question. So I'm like,
wow. Because I didn't pick up on that theme in it. And so I don't know if it was how I was reading it. I didn't see that, or it wasn't a note that I had made about the book. So I'm really curious what points you had that you found that fit that.
okay, so I'll do some like little quotes here. So 48 for me. Rivers is talking about a dream of his. The psychiatrist is talking about a dream and trying to analyze it for himself. And so he's trying to interpret this like based on Freudian stuff. And let's see. They'd been trained to identify emotional repression as the essence of manliness. Sound
Hmm.
familiar? Men who broke down or cried or admitted to feeling fear were sissies, weaklings, failures, not men.
Oh, okay.
And then he talks about his own experience and how he was brought up and trained, and how that is in conflict with what he's telling the men to do, to feel it,
Hmm.
to go through it, to get over it. It says he was excavating the ground he stood on. So he really was feeling the tension between what he did to get through the day and what he was telling these soldiers to do to get through the day. And fear, tenderness, these emotions were so despised so that they could be admitted into consciousness only at the cost of redefining what it meant to be a man. And I was like, ding, 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 ding. Like, that is what I wish we were embarking on as a project instead of worrying about, I don't know, digital trading cards.
I actually had to ask my husband what that was, by the way. He was trying to explain it to me, and I didn't get the
Okay.
concept of a digital trading card
Yeah.
last night. I was like, what?
Yeah. But yeah, like that is a serious big issue, I think,
Mhm.
even today, like over 100 years later. So
Yeah.
what it means to be a man. We've got Pryor. Pryor is another one of the inmates, the patients of the psychiatrist, and he talks about he's very reluctant to talk, but when he does, he's got this like when he ran out and he was being shelled and like going across the field, how did it feel? He said it felt sexy because he was putting himself into danger, and like that made
Mm.
his virile manhood sort of feel enlivened. And sort of these like weird juxtapositions where I would say like things we could leave behind, things we might want to grow out of, things we might want to like reconsider. Let's see.
It's interesting. Like I said, I didn't read it with that lens for whatever reason. I didn't pick up on those nuances in there. I picked up more on the kind of like I said, that not the anti-war part of it. I definitely picked up on the hypnosis component and the descriptions of war, and like the descriptions of the trenches and things like that, and just how, I mean, horrific it was. I also did recognize the dream component of it and the Freudian kind of analysis it felt like in that part of it, but not the emasculating part of it. So interesting.
So the book is rather short. So when they had
Yeah.
like a sidebar kind of thing, what was happening that was being observed or talked about, I was like, okay, why is she putting this in here? You know, and I was paying
Mhm.
more attention because I was like, we don't have a lot of time to fritter around with a 250-page book. So the other
Are you
piece
talking
that I
about the sidebar with Pryor and Sarah? Or are you
no, no,
talking
no, not even that yet. Like
about
even
oh, okay.
smaller. So one
Okay.
of the scenes that I was thinking about, there's one more point for this, but the scene where who's watching? Who is it watching? Page 98. Um, there's someone watching from a window as some of the patients are out cutting the lawn. Do you remember
Oh,
this scene?
vaguely,
And
yeah.
they're cutting and they're like da da da, and then they're like having fun with it because it's a nice day. And then they take off their jackets and they're like going at it much more vigorously and getting the job done better. And then someone comes out because they're having too much fun and says, "Put your uniforms back on. You can't be out of whatever." And
Mhm.
then they go back and they're just like this. And I thought that seems like you're robbing them of um their agency, you know,
Hmm.
like by being such a strict adherent to stupid rules about
Yeah.
dress. So that
Interesting.
kind of thing. I don't know. No, didn't hit you.
I think it's interesting talking to you about this because as an author, I think you read things and think of things that as you're writing something that you might have been, your perspective is slightly different than mine, where I'm kind of just going through and not necessarily looking for those things or thinking of those things as I go through them. So it's really interesting to hear your perspective because I think we pick up on very different themes and thoughts about the book because of that
Yeah,
different background. So, yeah.
yeah. And then the last point on this one was the patient prior and how he was butting into when he was in a really like violent moment. He was running his head into the
Oh,
psychiatrist.
right.
Whatever. He said he felt like he was being treated like it was a nanny goat, like it was a goat butting up against
Mm,
him. That's the image that he recalled. And then another patient said something about he felt like he was his male mother. And so there was lots of like gender role reassignments like going on and sort
mm.
of playing with those and how the people of that time felt about it. And so that I
Mhm.
thought was really interesting. So yeah. Excuse me. Roles of mothers and fathers. Oh, I didn't answer this one. How do they help or undermine the healing of the patients? Oh yeah, the visitors. What did you think about the visits that the patients gotten?
Yeah, I so again, that wasn't a kind of a one that I am flipping back through the book, thinking I can find something about that really struck with me.
Yeah.
About the so for me, it didn't have a big impact. I thought there were other things that were a much bigger impact
Mm,
than the visits. Though I think back to Sarah and Pryor and like that kind of part of it, I think there was more with them than with the fathers or the mothers in this. I don't know if
mhm.
you did say you didn't answer this one.
Yeah, I stopped halfway through because I didn't complete my assignment. Um, but yeah,
You did a
let's go
scene.
to that sidebar because basically the whole novel is about these soldiers in the hospital and like
Mhm.
what's going to happen to them. Are they going to go back to the front? Are they going to heal? And then you have the sideline where one of the soldiers is like rustling up a bird on the side and walking into town and at first pretending he's not a mental patient, but then
Right.
like getting to know this girl who's working in a munitions factory. And I feel like they get on rather well after some initial bumps, and it's sort of hopeful. What did you take from that being in the book, and then how did you like it?
I mean, it was a kind of just a almost out of place like sidebar in there. But in one way, it's to depict the patients as being real, normal, human, wanting physical connection.
Mm,
And he was definitely more about the physical connection in the beginning, right? With her, that's
mm.
what he really wanted,
Yeah,
or
we're in his
what
head. We get to hear about
yeah,
it.
we get to hear about it in detail.
Yeah.
So that part of it, but I don't know if it was the switch of one, he wasn't able to go show up because he was in the hospital or whatever for one of the pieces. And then there was one episode where they were out and he fainted or something. And I thought that was really an interesting way of showing more of his real kind of self to her. But yeah, that was the sexual side of it was like you were definitely in his head and
Right,
not in her head.
right.
So,
Well, and then there was a whole side thing where you were just in her not in her head, but you were close third person at her
Right.
a place with the mom when she went out to lunch with her mom. And so, okay, you're thinking your main character is the soldier and the psychiatrist, and then you're going to another patient, and then you're going to the girlfriend of
Another
that patient,
patient.
and then
Yeah.
the girlfriend's mother out at lunch, and you're just like, why are we going so far down this? It was very
Yeah.
interesting.
That part surprised me because in the beginning I thought it was going to be all about Sassoon and the doctor, and then I get why the other patients were there because it
Right.
showed different ways that they had PTSD, had different kinds of ways it manifested, and a way for the doctor to interact and show different ways of treating patients. And so I thought that part was really interesting as well. But it was unexpected. I thought it was going to be all about proving that Sassoon was fit for duty or not fit for duty, and all of these other kind of pieces working in. I thought it was a great aspect of the book because it gave you a lot of different perspectives that I wasn't quite expecting.
Mm-hmm. Were there points where you were like, what are they even talking about? Because when the mother or like someone at the boarding house with the girls was talking about putting a pin through every 10th one, I was like, are they talking about condoms? Like, why would they do
Oh,
that? Like, I was like, I'm a little
no.
lost here, but I think I get the general gist.
A pin through every 10th one. Ew. Okay.
To like keep the women subservient or something. I don't know.
I don't know.
I
Hi, Katya.
got you. Oh, yeah. So I was a little lost in some pieces, but definitely
That's
interesting
normal
story.
for me in a book. I will be lost at pieces. So that's nothing new, unfortunately.
It happens. Yeah, me too. What about Owen? So this is Wilfred Owen, and that like raised a flag because I know about Wilfred Owen's poetry. So I was like, oh, another real character. And little
Mhm.
did I know they're all like almost all real. How is Owen portrayed in the novel? In what ways is he like and unlike Sassoon? Or like, what did you think of his character in general?
So the poetry component I thought was a really interesting and effective use. I love the use of poetry in this book. It's actually a
Mm.
few of the things that I marked in this. I loved
Ooh.
reading those parts. I also felt like often Owen was using Sassoon as kind of a mentor for his poetry and running poetry by him, trying to get, almost like approval from him about what he was writing. And it was a way that they could communicate using the same language, essentially, but not having to verbally speak. This is what they felt. That's kind of what I thought about the poetry. But
Yeah.
I liked the poetry in it. I thought it was actually really, really good.
Yeah. I didn't mark any of the poems themselves, but the first meeting that they have, I
Uh-huh.
thought was really good. So for me, that was page 81. And you get Wilfred Owen, who is younger and not as self assured for many reasons, not just because of his age, because of his experience, because of his social class, all these other things. Um, and so he's stuttering. There's
Mhm.
widespread coverage of the fact that the war veterans often express their PTSD in stuttering. So that's like written on the
Didn't
page.
Rivers also stutter though too? The
Yeah,
doctor was stuttering.
yeah.
Okay. I'm not misremembering that. Okay.
And it's so funny. Like you're in Sassoon's head as he's looking at this guy going, "Oh God, not like another fan, and what's he gonna do?" And like he's just so I don't think I'm spoiling this for anyone, but Wilfred Owen died during the war, and so his poems were published posthumously, and so, like, that immediate compassion comes up on the page for his character because you're like, "He's gonna die in the next year." Like, "Oh, this is, like, a glimpse of him that we get that is, like, somewhat more colored and, um, pretty cool."
Yeah,
So
it's my version of the book that I have is a used copy, and there's someone wrote notes in it, and so I get someone else's thoughts as well. That he's using Sassoon for therapy. Essentially, Owen is that he's his
to
therapist.
work
I
out
thought
some
that was interesting.
issues.
Look, a
Hmm,
poem right there.
nice.
So
I wonder if it was for someone's GCSEs.
maybe you're 15. You never know. You never know.
Um So yeah, everything about Sassoon intimidated him. His status as a published poet, his height,
Yeah.
his good looks, the clipped aristocratic voice, sometimes quick, sometimes halting, but always cold, the bored expression, the way he had of not looking at you when he spoke. Shyness perhaps, but it seemed like arrogance. Above
Mm,
all, his reputation for courage. Yeah. So I just loved the meeting of those two and the fact that it actually happened. I was like, "Oh my
yeah.
gosh, that's so cool." I didn't know that part.
I didn't know that they were based off of real characters until after I was done with the book.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Um, the famous poem by Wilfred Owen is dulce et decorum est, and it's just like so sharp, so cutting, and anti-war in its sentiment. So yeah, I'd recommend reading that since that is not in this book. um One of the questions is about Pryor. Is Pryor's relationship with Sarah romantic? So I'm going to put up this just in case people are going to read it and don't want to like spoil the romance part because that may be entertaining. Can it be described as love? How does the war affect it? How do you think about that? Going down that road a little.
It's so hard because you're in his head, and it just felt like it wasn't necessarily about love, but about physical connection and about that side of it, rather than it being a love-based piece. I felt like it was an opportunity that he came across, and he took it rather than it being like a real loving relationship. At least in the beginning, maybe towards closer to the end, there was a little bit more, but in the beginning, I felt like it was mainly about him. So I didn't see it as being super romantic. I felt like he was taking advantage of an opportunity that was presented to him. So
I think that when he was getting out, and so, he's the one who said it was sexy to charge out on the battlefield like he was going to get killed. I think he's definitely got issues about, feeling like a man because he has asthma, and you end up discovering that his asthma is limiting his participation in the war. He's not going through the things that the same his soldier friends are. And so he has this complex about proving himself. And so I think one of the ways he wants to do that is like having a girlfriend and, getting some tail, as they might say in 1917. And so I think it's less lust and more like proving himself to himself. But then
it's
it
still
develops
not really love based.
No, not at the beginning. Not at the beginning. But I think because it has that confirming who he wants to be seen as, that it develops into like she listens, he listens, and like he ends up trusting her. Can't remember how it ends. They don't really tie up that end.
No.
So
maybe in book 2.
hopeful.
Maybe we'll
Oh yeah. I guess we'll see them again in book 2. I forgot about that. Yeah. Which characters change throughout the course of the novel and which remain static? What are the larger implications for this personal growth or stagnation? So did you keep note of that?
I feel like the Rivers character, the doctor, so Dr. Rivers is the doctor that's evaluating Sassoon for everyone who hasn't read it. And for him, he went from being like in a position of authority to having to be sent away for his own kind of recovery. And I thought that just kind of that arc, and then him having to come back and then reevaluate Sassoon again was a really a great storyline as far as trying to maneuver through that, because he had his own problems and his own issues and trying to help others get through that. I thought he had a really interesting development. I'm not sure Sassoon really changed much from the beginning to the end. He kind of just took on whatever the people said. Okay, if you think I'm okay, then I must be okay, and I'll go back. I didn't see a lot of like additional development with him, and I was surprised by how little he was actually in the book. Because it was Pryor a lot, it was Rivers a lot, but Sassoon was very kind of like almost a minor character through much of the book. And it was always seemed to be focused on other ones. But Rivers, I thought, had a good development.
Interesting. I haven't analyzed this. I might be saying it wrong, but I might say that Sassoon is more affected by others' manipulation of him than would wish him to be, because it's like other events that would push him to decide what's right and wrong, because he knows what's right and wrong. He has that speech about conforming, and like he couldn't live having to conform in all the ways of his life to be free, or nobody should live like that. I thought that was a good speech. Okay, interesting. I want to think about this question a bit more. But there's another sideline, which is the whole Burns. Like Burns is one of the first patients we're introduced to who can't eat because of the horror that he experienced. And Rivers actually goes to visit with him and has an interesting sort of one-on-one in Suffolk at the end of the book. How did that hit you? What did that reveal?
Yeah, I didn't really kind of come back to me as much, that one. I don't have anything written down about that one at all. What were you
Yeah.
thinking about that one?
I mean, I like how they originally paint the horror that Burns has experienced as special, and so Rivers can't really force him to do anything as a
Mm,
psychiatrist because he can't get over the fact that like every time he smells food, he imagines that he's like head first in this decomposing body,
yeah.
and it's horrific. But then he sort of comes to a point where he can accept that everything that these guys have gone through is horrific. So how do I
Mm,
separate that? You still need to go through it at some point, but his way of going through it is different. And so he's on his own turf, he's with his own people. He can finally talk about it after he has another like terrifying experience, and Rivers is there. And I thought that was a success for his type of treatment.
therapy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I thought that was illuminating and positive for Rivers and for like
Hmm.
my personal view. So yeah, the weird guard tower on the beach thing was like pretty intense. I was like, "Oh god, are they gonna drown?" That was exciting. Speaking of intense, the next question is compare Rivers to Yaleland. Are either or both doing their duty? And I'll put spoiler alert up here because this is also like a content warning.
Leland. He is a piece of work, isn't he? So I
Mm,
actually have a mark on this, and I think this line describes the difference between the two doctors because Rivers comes across as being very compassionate and very empathetic towards what they're going on, having had that experience. And Yeeland, it wrote, and here he goes. Yeeland nodded, good. The last thing these patients need is a sympathetic audience. Like he did not, he was the one giving shock treatments. He was the one like just doing this very invasive type of treatment and was very unsympathetic. And
mhm,
Rivers, I felt like tried to connect, tried to make those emotional connections with people in order to help them heal and get to the true answer, where Yeeland was just like, no sympathy at all. I just did not like Yeeland
yeah,
at all.
yeah. Are they both doing their duty?
I
They
don't
say they signed up for a contract or whatever, and they gave their word. So how does that color your opinion?
I feel like if I were, I mean, the kind of a therapist that I would want evaluating me in that scenario would be
Right,
someone like Rivers,
right.
obviously, and that he is trying to do the best thing for his patients. It's hard to argue that in Yeeland's case, but maybe in his own head, this is the best thing for them. And in his world, that is doing the best job, where that treatment now is not necessarily super effective, or the things that we know reading that kind of part now, it's very questionable treatment, right? I don't haven't researched it all, but it's kind of like it's hard to see that as being an okay thing. So for
Right.
me, I lean that Rivers is trying to do that, trying to help his patients, trying to truly evaluate them too, and not just give them a rubber stamp. Yeah, they're good for duty. That's how I saw Rivers.
Yeah. Yeah, that scene was really hard for me to read because
Mhm.
it doesn't read as shock therapy, it reads as, like, torture because he's
Yeah,
a doctor it's a doctor whose name is mentioned at the beginning, you don't know much about him, he's mentioned once or twice, and then, Rivers on his leave actually goes to visit him because he can't put it off, and he witnesses a treatment, and the treatment is like electroshock torture because
yeah, it's
someone who
bad.
won't speak, who Rivers has treated very differently and successfully, ends up like being tortured over a period of hours to speak, and he's like ratcheted right back down to someone who can't think, who can't speak. And was it in the book? Where did I okay, there was a thing that I read that was about silence. Was that in the book where he was helping him to speak, forcing him to speak, to like get
Yeah,
his
he
words
locks them in a
across?
room and says, "You're not leaving until you speak," is
Right.
essentially what he does. Yeah.
But the symbolic nature of how he ends up, the soldier, at the end of that scene is he can speak, but he is effectively silenced. He can no
Mhm.
longer protest the war in his own way, in his
Yeah.
PTSD way, because he's been like brainwashed or tortured into submission.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really effective. Do you recall that at the end of the book talking about silence, or did I pick that up on one of my like searches?
No, it's definitely in here. And then the other part is in this that Yeelan says is like, you must speak, but I shall not listen to anything you have to say. It's
Which
like,
was weird
well,
in the moment. It didn't make sense to me
you're
in the moment.
forcing me to say something, but you're not actually going to listen. Then what's the point of me saying anything? You're just basically forcing your will on me, is what I got from that.
The
So
pointlessness of war.
yeah.
See?
Oh, look at it go all full circle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that was
he's
rough.
just not a nice dude, Yelan. He's like, I do not like your smile. I find it most objectionable. Okay, so you're not allowed to say what you want. You're not allowed to smile. But you will talk. And yeah, it just was really. And then the other word is like, you're not pleased to be cured. Well, I don't know. I mean, how do you resolve that in your own head? It's just, yeah, I did not like that character.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, what else do we have? I had some style observations, like if anything popped out at you in terms of style. Really early on, page 5, my first, corner turned down was
Your
page
first
5.
dog-eared page.
Dog-eared page, thank you. And it happened several times after that where I noticed that like so much was communicated by an action beat, and it would be involving River's hands and his eyes. So it would be like removing his glasses to clean them, or passing his hand over his eyes, or like the silences. And I just thought that was really effective, and it made me pay attention very closely.
Interesting.
So did you have anything that it was like every time it happened as an action, it was really effective that you noticed? Or
No, nothing that detailed. I noticed and called out when they used poetry. I saw that but that's a very obvious one as you go through. So it was very easy to see that one. The nuanced pieces of it, maybe not as much, right? I think it's because of you being a writer, you pick up on some of those very clearly. And I'm just reading along going, oh, look, he's wiping his eyes.
which is funny because I am not one of the critical readers. When I hear other authors talk about it, they say the books are ruined for them. They can't read anymore because they're constantly thinking about the structure. And I'm like, well, I don't do that.
Well, comparatively, you and I, right? You're probably more critical than I am, or reading it more critically than I am.
But you liked it less. So like critical in a different way.
Yeah.
That's
critical
funny.
eye, meaning you pick up on those details, not that you're criticizing or disliking the book. Yeah.
There's actually another book that has the same tick. So one of the things that I think the author used as a like vulnerability moment was showing someone's neck, and it was really weird in the moment. So I noticed it as like someone seeing the back of someone's neck under their collar.
Oh, interesting.
And so I'm trying to think like where I noted that neck imagery. Oh, meeting Wilfred for the first time is when I noticed that. But it also comes up another couple times. And I think that might be like trying to reveal humanity or vulnerability or something like that, because only really intimate people see like maybe the back of your neck. I don't know. I don't know. That was why it poked out to me. I was kind of like, what is this? No.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on that one either. I need to make better notes as I go through for a live show.
Did you have any of your tabs that you wanted to read that were like
No, I read a couple.
Good,
I mean, I definitely read a couple of them already. But a couple of the other ones that I thought were really interesting. It's like, yes, but I couldn't seem to see a way out. It was like being 3 different people and they all wanted to go different ways. I thought that was really a powerful line in there, and talks about just how troubled and how pulled in different directions you are when you're in this scenario of having PTSD. The other part I wish was between Sassoon and Rivers, by the way.
Okay, Sassoon.
Yeah. And then, again, we just don't really change. We haven't really changed much about how we treat this even now. And one of the things that was in the book, and I don't have it marked, is that we treat the symptoms, the physical symptoms, and not necessarily the psychological impacts or the psychological side of it. So, oh, you're no longer stuttering and stammering, you must be cured. And really, that's not the case. And that is, I would say, true today as well as in this time frame. So, but I can't remember what else I marked. I marked the regeneration line.
Yeah. You caught that. I didn't. So yeah, you were reading more closely on that one.
The other part that definitely comes up is the idea of survivor's guilt. that comes up throughout the book, and you don't think you might find being safe while other people die rather difficult. Even that expression of that I thought was good.
Mm-hmm.
What's that noise? Was that me or you? Or did you not hear it?
I didn't hear a noise.
Okay.
I'm just popping actually a link into the comments here. Pick up the book if you enjoy it. I'm going to put it on for Bookshop if anyone is curious. It's really good, I think. I would recommend it. Sandy's more reserved, but can see its good points, right?
I definitely can see its good points. And I think it's one of those books that I'm not saying, oh, I hated it. I'm not looking forward to reading the next 2 in the series, which there have been series that I've been like, no. Yeah. So that's not this. I thought there was a lot of really good aspects to it. And I thought the beginning was incredible. I really liked how we got introduced to him. So I'm curious about the next book. I'm curious about her more famous one, The Ghost Road, which is actually the 3rd book in the trilogy. And some of the other ones. So yeah, I'm not unhappy with it, but I'm not like, wow, this is the best book ever. It's definitely going on my next top 10.
Yeah.
So
I thought the writing was showing a lot of talent, and I appreciated it. I gave it 4 instead of 5 stars because the subject is just not my thing. And so as ratings are subjective, it's like it's not going to be one of my favorite books because it's talking about this really hard thing that's interesting, but again, not in my heart of hearts. So
yeah, I get that.
Do you ever have moments where you read a book and the one right before it, you're like, oh, and sort of sparks go off because you connect the dots between different books that you're reading, or at the same time? Are you reading 6 books at once?
The connect the dots between series sometimes depends on how far apart it is when I read book 1 and book 2.
Oh, I don't mean related books. I mean different books where the ideas just sort of ping off each other.
Sometimes, but I didn't have that experience with this book because I was reading this at the same time as the Brothers Karamazov. There weren't a lot of similarities between that. Have you read any Dostoevsky?
Nope.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, I imagine. It's chunky books.
Yeah, 974 pages. My version of the Brothers Karamazov.
Tomes. Which is their tome readathon?
March of the Mammoths? Is that
March of the Mammoths? Okay, yeah, that would work.
That's in March.
Tome topplers. That's the other word I was trying to think of. People do that in any month. So I had one of these. So I just did in my wrap up a review of Whose Freedom by George Lakoff. And in reading the reviews, I definitely see that it's somewhat biased. There's some parts of the book that kind of go a little too far, and that's fine. I really was interested in Lakoff's description of language change and how if you hammer on certain words, you can change the meanings because you're changing the assumptions built into the meanings. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting, and how it interacts with your neural frameworks of language. So that was really cool. And he takes that and then talks about the neural frameworks and talks about the system, the system that you use to organize the world, basically. And there's strict father interpretations and nurturing parent interpretations. Those are his too. And so this quote at the end of Regeneration, let's see, page 115. I have it paraphrased, but I should probably quote it so I don't get out of whack here. It's, whose voice is it in? Rivers Inspection. Oh, here we go. This would have been easier if he could have believed, as Louis Yayland, for example, believed, that men who broke down were degenerates, whose weakness could have caused them to break down, eventually, even in civilian life. But Rivers could see no evidence of that. So Yayland, who we're not sympathetic with, who is torturing a patient, but seeing it as doing his duty, is someone who thinks degenerates gonna degenerate. And you're sort of built as you were from the beginning, and there's no way to help you. Whereas Rivers comes to see it as the people who are under the most strain for the longest and not allowed any control over their own actions are the ones who break and have those after effects. That is really pinging with this whole strict father, you're not allowed agency, nurturing parent, you're allowed to experiment and have your own mistakes and then be an adult in your own right, which I don't think Yalen lets his patients be. And I was like,
No.
oh, that's so good. So yeah, nonfiction book and this like random 30-year-old novel. Who knew?
Who knew? Who knew? Yeah, I didn't have that same with this one. So yeah.
It's an odd choice because the nonfiction Whose Freedom is from 2006, so it's also old. So you know, I have a nickname on BookTube. It's Queen of Books You've Never Heard of. So there you go.
Nice.
Coming in clutch.
Queen of never heard of.
Yeah, books you've never heard of.
I feel like that with some of the 1001 books because I was looking through them going, well, I don't know who that is, but
yeah.
I think not 2023, but 2024 I may label it the year of books you've never heard of.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because I could definitely pull 52 that I have never heard of. So we'll
But
see.
do you expect those to be good finds, or do you expect it to be few and far between of like ones you'll like?
Well, so I think some of my favorite books that I have read so far were books I've never heard of. My three of my top ones that are in my giveaway, right? Cat's Eye, Tin Flute, Kristen Laverne Stouter. I had never heard of them before. And so I'd heard of Margaret Atwood because of The Handmaid's Tale, but none of her other works. And so I'm always hopeful that there'll be one in there that I just love. And that is a great new find that will be a favorite going forward.
Nice.
So you never know. You never know. But some of the books that are really highly rated, I have not loved. Some of the Pulitzer winners, I have not loved. So kind
Dish
way
the
of putting
tea,
it.
Sandy. We know. We saw your last video or 2 videos ago. Yeah.
My least favorite from the
Yeah.
first 100.
That was good. I liked it.
Yeah, just don't make me read any Updike and I'll be fine.
Yeah. I have so far avoided that pitfall, so I'm pleased with myself.
It's hard because he's a Pulitzer winner and I just can't. There's a couple others that are Pulitzer winners that I think it was Kelly over at Books I'm Not Reading said, just don't read it. I read it for you. Don't read it. I think it was Gravity's Rainbow by Thomas Pynchon. She's like, just don't do it.
Pulitzer winners, but from another age.
Yes, definitely. Very much so.
So if you liked the Margaret Atwood, so I'm gonna name drop here. Someone compared my latest book with Margaret Atwood's style.
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm just like very excited about that. I'm gonna put it in the comments. So I have a short story collection out. It's historical, fantasy, supernatural kind of short stories. And that is the link to find it on Smashwords, and it's only half price through the end of the year. So just pop that out there in case anyone's looking for a fun little gift or treat. Yeah. Do you have anything coming up that you want to tell people about since we're rounding out our hour here?
Really, I'm just wrapping up the year. I have my book club for 2023 announcement that will come out next week, I think on Thursday. So I'll be sharing the 10 books that I have selected for that,
Nice.
Which is exciting. Hard to come up with which ones I wanted to do. That's the main thing I think I have. And then the normal reflect on my year and those kinds of videos will come up in the next couple of weeks.
Nice. You mentioned book club. It is hard to choose books for book club. Mm-hmm. This is my last one for my Patreon book club, Amberloo by Laura Elena Donnelly, and I just finished it last night.
Nice.
It's a glam queer spy thriller fantasy. Oh. So imagine all that together. And it was quite slow to get into, but fast paced, and then had me by the end. So I'm looking forward to our discussion. In a couple hours, we're going to do that with our book club, and then I have to think about the next year's books because I don't have those ready either.
Yeah, I mean, I knew. So I had put the 52 books for 2023 out, and then said the book club will be generated really from that list. And then I went back through the comments and saw how many people requested one of those books. So there was a book that had 4 or 5 votes on it, that kind of stuff. So I prioritized those to the top of putting them on the book club for 2023 because I want to read books that people really want to join in as well. So, but it's hard.
Yeah, the responsibility, very high.
Wonderful. Exciting though. Good luck picking your books.
I know. I have so many. I don't really have a TBR. I have like a library. So I don't have a list to go by. I don't have a priority system. I feel like I'm just going to be trying to balance like a mystery and nonfiction and sort of like make it balanced in terms of genre and author and date
Yeah.
and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's what I try to do anyway.
I was
So.
more trying to balance length. I did not
That is a good thing. Yeah.
a big 10 really large books this year. So a couple of the book club picks are very slim, which I think is great.
Yeah.
And then I do have a mammoth for March.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, there's going to be all sorts of planning for next year.
Yeah, yeah. But other than that, no, that's pretty much it. And then just surviving the holidays, pretty much.
Thriving. It's going to be
Thriving
like,
in the holidays.
yeah,
It's a much more
self-care
positive
all
way.
day. Yes. Yes. Sweet. Well, let's see. I'm on your channel. So for all the people viewing on Sandy's channel, once again, my name is Margaret Pinard. Thanks for listening to the book discussion. I hope we didn't spoil it, but we like got you excited to read this book by Pat Barker. I'd give it 4 stars. Sandy gave it like maybe 3.5. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
And yeah, she's going to be continuing because of the list, and I'm going to be continuing because I really liked it. But yeah, lots of stuff still to go on both our channels. Please
Definitely subscribe.
Yeah. And have a lovely, merry holiday. Sandy, do you want to say anything to people on my channel?
Definitely subscribe to Margaret. She's wonderful, very supportive of the booktube community, author-tube community, and definitely go buy her book. I have one of your books. I don't have all of them. I have one of them. So
that's amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, I'll go ahead and sign us off and say happy reading, everyone. Happy holidays. Take care of yourselves and be safe.
Thank you.